All right. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the break and were able to meet some other attendees. One of the main reasons why we do this event is to bring together a community of leaders together. So now we're excited to kick off the second half of the event and introduce our next speaker, Dr. Mik Kersten, author of the book Project to Product, and he will be discussing measuring digital outcomes with the Flow framework. Welcome, Mik.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mik Kersten. I'm coming here to you from Vancouver, so it's great to be here virtually at the Pendo Guide Summit. And I've spent my career first as a software developer for about a decade, writing a lot of open source software and understanding how to deliver value to customers quickly, and always struggling with how to measure how much value we're delivering, other than figuring out basically how much it is, but how much is it actually driving those kinds of outcomes. I then spent another now been 15 years helping large enterprise organizations with their digital transformations. And as part of that journey, I ended up writing the book Project to Product, creating the Flow framework, which I'll be talking about today, and really helping organizations measure digital outcomes. So today I'll be talking to you about how to think about the shift from project to product, how to think about flow, and really how to look at how we effectively measure the value that we're delivering through software, both in terms of the activities that we're doing, but really in terms of the outcomes that we're providing for our customers, for our staff, and for organizations as a whole. So this talk will be a lot about flow, but really think of it as how do we find these leading indicators for getting those great customer outcomes? And fundamentally, how do we make our value streams, the way that we actually deliver value through digital, through software, visible to the business, to organizations, to our teams, in order to drive those digital outcomes. So the thing that, in terms of my background, a lot of my background has been around measurement. As part of my PhD work on understanding and formalizing value streams with my background in computer science and programming languages, I realized that we were really lacking ways of measuring whether things were improving, whether we were making it easier to give value to our customers, or whether we were slowing things down. And I realized that this was true actually across the entire industry. I'd speak to CIO after CIO or chief digital officer or CTOs or other roles. And I would ask, how are you measuring whether you're actually improving things through transformation, both in terms of making it easier for your teams to deliver value, but also making it easier in terms of delivering those outcomes. And of course, the outcomes for organizations are the customer-facing products that they create. But for a lot of them, actually for a lot of the customers I still work with today, about 80, 70, or 70% of those portfolios are actually internal applications. So they're applications that the employees are using day to day. And what I realized is that there wasn't a consistent way of measuring either the activities that we're taking or the outcomes that we're trying to drive. And as soon as you don't have a way of measuring, it gets very hard to know at a business level where to invest. Where's our bottleneck? Because what we know from all of the history of lean manufacturing and lean thinking is any investment that you're making outside the bottleneck is an illusion in terms of driving those kinds of outcomes. So I'd ask this question, where's your bottleneck? What do you measure? And I was never getting a straight answer. And then I realized, well, if we go back to lean principles, if we look at other industries who have not the 2 or 3 generations of basically maturing that we have in software, but 5, 6, or 7, we actually have a lot of maturity in understanding what we're measuring and how we measure it, and actually an investment in measurement infrastructure. So as the backdrop for the Project to Product book, I actually went and visited the BMW Leipzig plant to learn how one of, at that time, the most advanced manufacturing plants on the planet was building its cars, and really how they were measuring and how they were making sure that those measurements actually connected to some kind of outcomes for the organization itself and for BMW's customers. And what I saw there, and this is a screenshot of a photo of the Leipzig plant, is that first of all, product and product value streams were everywhere. Value was always understood per product. These were not Gantt charts you were seeing on the walls. These were actually, every product value stream was well understood, was architected, and everyone in this building knew exactly what every product value stream was, to the point that some of them, in this case, you actually see the car value streams going over the cafeteria. So that this was actually visible and tangible. Going back again to Jim Womack's lean principles, identifying the value stream for each product. So we all understand what it takes to deliver value, the design, the development, the operations, the sentiment analysis, all of those steps need to be well understood. Making value flow without interruptions. We want to make sure everything's connected, that everyone's getting those right kind of metrics and understands where things are slowing down, where things are are working, whether improving. And then this other key thing is to always let the customer pull value from the producer. So again, these are Lean's principles for manufacturing. I think each of these we need to apply to how we think about innovation and digital transformation and software. And this, in the end, is all about the customer. But of course, what BMW realizes is that their customers are not just the consumers of those BMW cars. Their customers involve everything that BMW produces. And in fact, what was made very clear to me at this plant is that BMW's most important product is not any specific car, it's the plant itself. And the investment that actually goes into making that plant something that allows the staff to be productive and to do their best work was absolutely a key way that this very advanced organization looks at this. So if we think about the flow of business value at this BMW plant, what we see is that there's a very clear understanding of what value is. It's quality cars that deliver sheer driving pleasure. So this was on the posters in the wall of this plant. What's interesting, of course, is that those cars are designed in annual cycles or sometimes multi-year cycles, but they're delivered every 70 seconds. So I was trying to, in doing the research for the book, find these analogies. Working in this case with BMW as one of our largest customers, I was realizing, okay, well, this is a little bit different in terms of how BMW thinks about manufacturing cars and how the people I work with BMW, which is all the software people, how they actually think about building software. Because in software, we're not doing things in annual cycles so much anymore. So in manufacturing, the creative and the manufacturing process are actually decoupled. So all design, I got to visit all the design buildings and the very cool 3D and AR environments there. They actually happen in different cities. They happen in Munich, whereas manufacturing happens here. And everything flows across this linear production line. So it's really easy to understand how value flows on that linear production line. But if we think about how value flows in our software organizations, it's quite different. So how does value flow through technology, flow through product and IT organizations? Well, what we do know is that it's the new value that we deliver to customers that tend to success and delight them. Those are the kinds of things that help with customer sentiment and with adoption of what we're building. But what's really interesting is that we're designing and delivering those things in nearly daily cycles, and then hopefully certainly less than the length of, say, a 2 or 3 week sprint. So this is very different than what's happening in a car manufacturing plant. And so the creative and the manufacturing process are actually one. And this is why software and these intangible things that we create through the features that delight our customers are actually so different than other kinds of manufacturing disciplines. And they flow across this value stream network because we've got different teams interacting. We've got different cohorts of customers using these things. We've got the business and product management intertwined in different ways depending on the organization's design. So we've actually got this value stream network, and we need to make that flow of value measurable. And we need to be able to connect that flow of value to specific outcomes that we're after, the customer outcomes, the staff outcomes that we're trying to drive. So to do that, I realized we need two things. We need to refine the kinds of metrics that we're looking at outcomes with, which again, previously in a lot of organizations, those are just the financial metrics. Those are profitability or cost metrics or those kinds of things. We actually need the kinds of metrics that we have in tools like Pendo, both on the adopt and the engage side, to have better leading indicators of what's going to drive those kinds of business outcomes. But then we need an additional set of leading indicators of what are we doing to actually get product adoption better, to get customer sentiment better, to get our NPS scores higher. And to do that, we actually need to understand flow. So I realized that we have got great financial metrics, but they're not enough. The metrics that come out of our systems like Salesforce, retention metrics, those are all very important. And of course, touch on the product metrics, but we need a richer set of metrics in terms of the kind of adoption and engagement. And then we need another set of metrics to actually understand how well are we doing at helping organizations drive that. These changes that we just made with doing a reorg or onboarding some new staff or onboarding a new cloud technology or solution, that actually help drive our product metrics, or did it somehow get in their way? So that's really where the flow framework comes in. And that's where the flow framework dovetails so beautifully with things like the product engagement score from Pendo. So let me first talk to you a little bit about flow, and then I'll connect these concepts together. So the flow framework states there's basically 4 flow items. Think of these as almost like the cars on that plan, but of course, these are things that we deliver through software. And so there are features, those are pulled by the customer, and those are that delight customers and drive adoption and the like. Defects, of course, that's kind of the reverse. As we fix more defects and create a better quality experience, we're providing a better experience for our customers and ensuring that they stay through the kind of workflows, whether those are internal or external products. So we need to make sure that the quality and defects are all being prioritized in every value stream. The risks, and because risks, given how central a role software plays to our economy today, security, availability, data privacy, those are a first class part. And those actually do take significant capacity of our teams today. And of course, customers want a secure experience, and there's a balance of security and convenience and all of that that we need to very consciously manage. And then there's debts. So that's technical debt, that's integration debt, that's value stream debt. Those are the kinds of things that prevent teams from building great features. As we say, over focus on features, we might build up so much technical debt that we're now slowing down feature delivery to a trickle. Or we might be on some very dated, let's say it's front end framework. You might have some of your value streams stuck on a framework like Angular, and you really need to move it to something more modern. And you need to make that case, because what you realize is you can't possibly drive the kind of product engagement scores that you're after while working with all that technical debt, because none of the new UI widgets or user interface experiences that you want to offer are actually present in that thing. So the key thing is to elevate these concepts that we all, for all those of us who spend a lot of time in self-development, understand day to day, but actually make them business-facing concepts, and to recognize that for every value stream, these 4 flow items are mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. It means if we only focus on feature work, our technical debt might climb to the point where we can't get more feature work done. Or if we had a major set of security work, let's say like Log4j that happened in December, that could actually derail our plans. If technical debt rises too much, defect rates could go up. And again, to make sure that we understand those dynamics and that we can actually connect those up to the outcomes that we're after. So the flow framework actually, the whole concept is to basically make sure we are defining each of our value streams. So every value stream can actually have its own set of outcome and business result metrics that you're after. And for each value stream, each product value stream, whether that's an internal or external product, you can actually measure the flow, how quickly you're able to deliver that, how effectively you're able to deliver that, and how that's doing in terms of driving those outcomes. So the way that you do that, you simply connect up to everything that you've got in the organization today. Those are the tools, those are the organization design structures, and so on. I should mention the Flow framework is Creative Commons license, so everyone can free to use it as they see fit. And then, of course, what's so interesting about speaking here at the Pendo Guide Summit is really thinking about how you connect that up to your product engagement and adoption metrics. So I'll quickly go into some of the core concepts so that you have a sense of this, and you can find more on flowframework.org. But basically, as I mentioned, there's this features, defects, risks, and debts that are flowing through every value stream. And for those, we need to measure the flow metrics. So flow velocity is how many features we get done. Flow efficiency is where the bottlenecks, what are the wait states, because wait states are the kiss of death in any value stream. Flow time, how long it takes for us to get value to our customers, because we know the more we shorten flow time, the quicker we can iterate, and the faster feedback loop we can have actually on engagement. For example, providing things like A/B testing. And flow load is a work in progress metrics, because what we've learned, and we've actually learned this empirically through studying enterprise organizations, is that we've got basically overloaded almost every large organization out there. So overly high flow load, too much work in progress is the main thing slowing things down. Now, of course, these are meant to be leading indicators for the business result side of things, where we've got some kind of value metric. And this is where you can apply some of the financial metrics, such as revenue or ARR growth and so on. But where I encourage everyone to look at things like product engagement scores as a great way of looking at value metrics. Cost metrics, every value stream has a cost. That's the staff, that's the hosting cost and the like. Qualities we mentioned. And then this other key one is happiness, because in the end, it's people building the software, it's people building value streams. And we actually need to understand how we're doing in terms of the happiness of the staff themselves. So it's both of the staff building the software, and of course, this will translate as a value metric to the staff that's actually benefiting and consuming the software, as we'll see in a moment. So it's really quickly, flow velocity is just how many things got done over a period of time. Flow efficiency is, again, where those wait states are, what's blocking us. Did we, for example, a very common one that we see as an organization that's complaining around overly low things like Net Promoter Score or product engagement scores. We actually look at their bottlenecks. It turns out the ratio of developers to designers to UX designers is 100 to 1. You look at a modern SaaS company, it's more like 10 to 1. And of course, you realize they've got this massive bottleneck in design, and developers are creating screens and not liking it and not liking what's being produced, and worse yet, customers not liking what the experience is. So flow efficiency shows you where those bottlenecks are. Is it a talent bottleneck? Is it a process bottleneck? Flow time is really key. It's actually a great flow metric to get started with, because it's how long it takes end to end, not just opening and closing user story, but end to end, from a customer request, from something that went onto a a product roadmap and OKR to get work completed to the customer. So flow time is key, just the same way that our manufacturers optimize for the end-to-end flow time through the factory, and of course the lead time to get something from a customer order. But flow time shows you how efficiently you can actually deliver things, and it's even more important in software because we effectively have an infinite number of things to deliver on our backlogs. So we want to optimize the flow time. And as I mentioned, flow load is how much load we're putting on the organization. So flow distribution is simply the ratio of those. And of course, we can then measure flow time for features, flow time to risks, and the like. And the key thing is, with the flow framework, we can now use this as a way of understanding and how we can shorten the feedback loop and how we can actually connect the way that we're investing in software value streams and how that's driving outcomes for our staff and our customers. And the whole challenge, of course, that we're seeing as we've now measured a lot of large enterprises value streams is that when these things are unmeasured, we end up with very significant problems. So these are some just real statistics I'll share with you from our last 12 months of research. So what we're seeing across large enterprises, and keep in mind, this is basically Fortune 500, Global 500 organizations, 8% of what's being planned by agile teams is getting delivered. So we've got this massive disconnect between all the ideas that there are in the organization of how we deliver better outcomes to our customers, to our staff through software, and what's actually being delivered. And there's this really big mismatch. Again, understanding that mismatch is what's so key to delivering those better outcomes. Here's another, even to me personally, more frustrating one. 20% of features are canceled after code is written across these large enterprise customers that we sampled. And so that's a massive problem because what's happening is where a lot of work goes into, and a lot of energy goes into starting coding on those features. It's tremendously wasteful to change them. So again, and of course, if those features are never making it to a customer, we don't know what they did in terms of improving the product engagement score or what they didn't. So we've got these really significant dysfunctions that I think measuring, connecting, and understanding our value streams can really help. And then, of course, there's this other big one that's exacerbating things, which is 35% of products have zero capacity for new work. So we really need to look at, okay, how can we, in terms of the outcomes that we're after, and those are the the engagement outcomes, the adoption outcomes that we're after, what work needs to get done? How do we look at our backlogs by working backwards, by starting with a customer, rather than, again, working in this completely overloaded state? So what's happened, this is just another illustration of it, and what I've seen across organizations, is that there's a lot of the wrong metrics being applied. So if the way that we're actually looking at measuring our value streams is in terms of putting deliverables and dates on features, and this is, by the way, very common, right? There'll be a roadmap somewhere. That roadmap will say we need to do this by then and this by then. It'll actually be disconnected from the way that teams and entire value streams work and what the real capacity is, because there's no metric of real capacity. It does not account for flow, what the current rate of flow of the teams is, and what their bottlenecks are. So it ignores the capacity. You're just increasing work in progress. So what you're doing is you're actually, by putting all these dates, by keeping this kind of more waterfall, more due date oriented mentality, and only focusing in on this feature, that next feature, that next requirement, what we're seeing across the industry is these value streams are slowing and grinding to a halt. This is why for so many organizations, why adding developers will actually slow things down, not speed things up, because it simply exacerbates those bottlenecks. So again, I think you've heard some great approaches at this conference to measuring outcomes for your customers, to measuring outcomes for your employees. And so if we can just change this entire approach and actually look at how we can define those outcomes, define them at an organizational level, and then connect them to the value streams, it completely changes the game. Because rather than overloading these things, you're actually making sure that everything that's making through is driving to the right outcome, and that the teams are able to actually communicate what their flow is, what they can take on next, and let's say stop starting and start finishing. So the key thing is to basically measure that flow of value, to understand what the bottlenecks are, and to make sure that's always connected to the outcomes that you're after. And then as part of that, of course, to prioritize learning and improvement, because as soon as you can shorten that flow time, you've actually got this feedback loop between the work that's being done, the features that are being taken on, the quality improvements being done, potentially some replatforming that you need to do, display some tech debt, and how that's driving a customer outcome. And make those difficult decisions, such as, should we swap out the front end right now because we're kind of stuck in terms of the sort of NPS scores we're getting with what we've got today in terms of our product until we actually modernize that. So again, it's to be able to connect these things up. And I'll give you an example right now of a large organization that did exactly this. So this is a real example. This is a large insurance company, and their goal was, and they actually expressed this in terms of company objectives and key results for this particular line of business. So their goal was 30% market share growth. They actually defined a very specific customer outcome as part of this, which is it needed to take half the time for customers to actually get an insurance policy provision than it was before, in terms of how they were revamping their digital experience. And so customers had to basically make sure that they made it through to the end of this. They were getting attrition through the workflow and so on. And then they did this really important thing. They said, okay, well, to do that, to drive that kind of innovation, to actually be customer centric, we have to be able to learn faster and to deliver faster and to create that feedback loop. So we need to improve our own flow time, how quickly we can deliver to customers by 10%. And they made this a part of their top level plan, this 10% flow time improvement. Again, keep in mind, flow time is this end-to-end time from when we want to start adding that new feature or that quality improvement to when we've got running software. And so this was the mobile part of their portfolio. And the way that they translated that company objective was to say, okay, to do this, we need a 20% mobile customer net promoter score improvement. So again, not quite as sophisticated as a product engagement score, but still a good start. Is that NPS measurement, and they're actually committed to measuring it. And of course, this was a key step. I think a lot of organizations out there, unfortunately, can't take this first key step because they haven't put in place the right measurement infrastructure. I know I cannot imagine a task top not being able to measure net promoter score and engagement and adoption metrics and sentiment metrics for our products, right? So, and of course, we happen to be a Pendo user, so I'm glad to be speaking at the Pendo Guide Summit. But however you do it, you have to do this to actually innovate and deliver products. But then we've got this other flow metric that's really important, because it's the interplay between these two that I think is so significant, where they want to see a 30% flow time reduction for features. So because they realize that to get that NPS score up, they need to deliver more features, because it's just been this trickle. And this is why so many of the internal and external applications that we see are actually not providing the kind of employee or the kind of customer experience that's needed. So in terms of actually improving on this, the interesting thing is, because of that high-level company goal of making all flow visible, making outcomes visible, there were already flow efficiency experiments in progress on this value stream. These teams realized that it was not their ability to code those features. It was not their issues with tech debt, like the example I gave before. It was actually feature verification that was their bottleneck. So the business side and the product management side was taking so long to actually approve the features that this was the main bottleneck of flow time. And of course, everyone assumes we don't have enough developers, we don't have enough designers. Again, that is often the case. I give those examples. This was not the case here. And that's the interesting thing with value streams, that delivering software is complex, organizational design is complex. So we always need to know where the bottleneck is. The team decided they were going to target 0 days wait state on business input. So this was a very bullish thing, of course, because it was a very significant change. And as a result of this, their flow time, and this is measurable, ended up being reduced by 70%. So when they went from flow time, it was taking them around 30 days to deliver new features, to taking under 10, just by virtue of this process change. And of course, what happened after that is the net promoter scores started rising, but that was the trailing indicator. The teams first need to be able to deliver those features to remove that bottleneck, to get to that outcome metric they were after, which is improving the customer satisfaction with the product, as measured in this case by the net promoter scores. And so the key thing was, and this is a real example we studied in detail. I've been presenting for a while, and we got a really good case study on. But it was the fact that they had these two things: they understood their flow, they understood their bottleneck, and everyone was clear what the outcome was. And the outcome was, again, better customer satisfaction as measured through the net promoter score. So the power of these things was, again, to this organization was quite transformational. So I think the whole goal, and what I really want to get across here, is that we need to move away from this kind of waterfall orientation, where we're assuming upfront that we really understand exactly what the customer outcomes we're after are, what the actual friction points will be for those customers, right? Because beneath those features, they were actually solving really significant authentication problems and logon problems and web and mobile experience usability problems and Android app problems and so on. So there's actually a lot underneath this example that the teams had to do. But the key thing is they had a clear outcome they were after, which is for them was measured through net promoter score, and they had a really clear way of tackling it. And importantly, they actually had the ability to tackle this. They had the capacity because they were doing those experiments. They were given the room to improve how they were working and how they were delivering value to the customer in order to have a shot at actually delivering that value faster and creating that fast feedback loop to create the kind of user experience innovation that's needed to drive great product engagement. So we really need to move away from waterfall orientation, not just for how we think about agile teams and how we think about development, but how we think about end-to-end value streams. You cannot assume that upfront you know exactly what is going to drive great product engagement scores in your products. That itself itself needs to be iterative, and that's why having a way of measuring engagement, a way of measuring adoption for your internal and your external product is so critical, because we simply don't know upfront what's going to be to provide a great experience. We don't know upfront for an external product. We don't know upfront what the competition will be doing, and what customers will assume is now the new way that they want to use things, or the new user experience that they want. For internal products, we might not know exactly how the suite of tools that we have or platforms that we have will tie together, and what the customer bottlenecks will be. So having very clear metrics for product, both product engagement, product adoption, and value streams is critical to actually making the shift from project to product. And again, getting away from that waterfall mentality of we know everything up front. We simply don't. We need to actually de-risk internal and external development, integration, and application efforts in order to provide great experiences. The key thing is in the shift from project to product also is to actually making sure that you've got these stable value streams. And this goes for internal products, this goes for platforms, this goes for external products, this goes for new tools that you're onboarding, is that you think of everything as a product, every platform as a product, every tool initiative as a product, and you've got stable teams supporting them, because it's those teams that will actually understand where those bottlenecks are. If you're reassigning people between different value streams, between different products, you're actually falling back to that waterfall mentality of allocating work to effectively cogs in the machine. That works much better for manufacturing than the creative discipline that software delivery is. And so again, define those product value streams for your entire portfolio. So define them for your external products, and make sure that you're providing those the product analytics, the sentiment analysis, all of that. And then do the exact same thing and make sure that supports the teams for your internal products as well. And where you want, again, that same adoption, that same success for your internal initiatives as your external initiatives. And that's actually a really significant part of the shift of project to product, is that we need to think of everything as a product portfolio that we're delivering to our customers. That will actually change your perception of how you're doing things like budgeting, right? So in terms of how much UX budget do we need? How much software budget do we need? Do we need to change budgets? If we think that we know all this up front, rather than taking this more metrics, more iterative approach that basically every tech giant out there and the leading startups have adopted, then again, we're assuming that we can predict the future, and we cannot, which is why having this more incremental metrics-based approach to how we're doing on product engagement, how we're doing on that business outcome that's driving, how we're doing on adoption is so critical, and exactly the pattern that very innovative companies take. And then finally, and this is actually something I have to say, I wish I'd put a little bit more emphasis in the project to product book on, and it's there. It just probably deserved its own chapter, is to understand that the product portfolio as a whole. So we've got all of these different value streams. We've got internal platforms being used for internal products, external products, customer data that's being reused, and so on. So we've got this very complex, what we call value stream network, that's already living in organizations today, and that we're trying to optimize the flow of in support of these outcomes. And we need to really change how we think about architecting that, and how we think about that entire portfolio. So, as one of the examples is, I think what we've seen is organizations, especially with the way that they're approaching digital transformation software, they're completely over-focused. And this is anecdotal, but I've absolutely seen this as the most common pattern on just the external facing products, which is great. We need to shift to, again, thinking about customers, NPS, and so on. However, so much of the products are internal, and we need to apply that same kind of discipline. We need those same kind of roadmaps. We need those same kind of metrics for the internal products as well, because in the end, it's those happy employees that deliver those great business outcomes to our customers. And so think of your portfolio in this way, where you've got the business products with an external customer, and those are really important. But the times I've seen where 80% of the focus is on those, and there's no focus on the internal ones, you get these really significant dysfunctions, because the internal tools and products that your staff are using are not able to deliver those external customer outcomes. So make sure that you also think about your portfolio as those internal products. You play that same kind of discipline. You apply tools like Pendo Adopt to this, so you're measuring that as well. And then to me, I think it's just as critical to think of that next layer down and actually take the product-oriented approach to developer tools as well. right? Developers who are building these things, tool integrators, technologists who are actually basically building those internal products and creating the infrastructure and creating the tooling to create those external products. So think of this portfolio holistically, and again, apply that product thinking, apply those concepts of product engagement and analytics across that whole portfolio. And of course, when you want to improve those, that's where it's time to apply the flow metrics and understand those dependencies. And of course, again, those things get interesting and complex because oftentimes our platforms power both our internal and external products. And again, investing, and interestingly, from organizations that have actually taken this more outcome and metrics-based approach and measured flow, they realize how much more investment needs to go into those internal platforms. So just to start summarizing, I think the key concepts here is to use flow metrics as this leading indicator for your customer outcomes. So as we were talking about, if you want to improve those outcomes, you want to improve product engagement, what do you need to invest in terms of improving flow to drive that? And really importantly, not just in terms of improving flow velocity, so basically how much you can get through this pipe. In this case, you see the evergreen on the Suez Canal as the bottleneck on the back of the slide, but how you can shorten the feedback loop, because shorten the feedback loop between actions that we took, whether that was a new screen that we provided, a new approach to authentication or something of that sort, how that actually drove product engagement. And that hypothesis-based way of approaching it needs those metrics of both the customer outcomes and then the flow metrics. And these create this great virtuous cycle. Employee outcomes, again, take that exact same approach. Are you providing those employee outcomes? What do you need to invest in? What are your bottlenecks? Is it an old platform you're on? Is it tooling that you need to modernize internally? Is it an internal development effort that you're going to take? Take that same kind of discipline that we've now, as an industry, defined very well for external products and apply to internal products. And of course, all of this together, the flow metrics, the customer outcome metrics, and employee outcome metrics, is what drives those great business outcomes. And I think, to me, a key part of this is actually helping educate our business leaders how important all of those are, how important actually elevating employee metrics and elevating employee happiness as a core organizational metrics is. I get customer metrics. I think we're further along as an industry in terms of understanding, of course, how important those customer metrics are and the product engagement scores are. And then the flow metrics, again, as a way to take those scores and say, okay, what are we going to do to improve them? Did it work? If not, do we focus elsewhere? And again, creating this virtuous cycle of removing bottlenecks and investing in what's going to drive the most flow and the most outcomes. And of course, keep in mind that great statement that by Goldratt stated in the goal of any investment that we make outside of the bottleneck is actually an illusion, because it's that bottleneck that's slowing down our ability to drive those outcomes. And keeping in mind, of course, that in software, this just isn't that simple, which is why these solutions and investing in actual metric solutions is so important, because we need that visibility. We need that visibility to be reliable. It takes time to actually learn how to act on that visibility and to create this virtuous cycle. And underneath this, we have this very complex dynamic system, these value stream networks, the size of our organizations, the dependencies between the teams and the software architecture, they're actually complex. So making all of that visible and understanding, are we improving? Or did we just make a mistake? Or did this not produce a result? Did this set of features not actually drive the outcome that we want? Is just a critical path of creating this feedback loop. So in terms of learning more around flow, you can join and any questions that came up from this, I'd be very happy to take on the flow community. We've got some courses there to help you understand these flow metrics, and again, help you understand how to connect them up to what you're doing in terms of getting your internal and external engagement and adoption metrics established within your organizations. And I think with that, you've got kind of all of the recipes for just amazing innovation for your companies, for your customers, and for your staff. So with that, thank you very much. And I can take some more follow-up on the Flow Framework community.
Dr. Mik, thank you. That was some amazing content. I actually even put your book in my Amazon cart.